Welcome to our first episode of Americans Abroad, the Expatsy podcast.
I can't believe we're finally recording this very first episode. We've been talking about doing this for, I think, over a year. Is the first time I threw out the word podcast to you. And we are finally here with our very first episode.
Well, we had to get you situated in Portugal first.
Exactly. So what are we talking about today on our very first episode of Americans Abroad?
We are having our experts from Uruguay. February of 2026, we had Uruguay as country of the month, and it is like number one with a bullet. I cannot believe how many people are starting to talk about moving to Uruguay. So we wanted to bring on some experts and share what it is that makes it special and how to move there.
And didn't you go on the first Expatsy scouting trip to Uruguay? Weren't you and Brett there?
Yes, we were. And it was amazing. Uruguay, we've visited 7 countries now to see about living there, to visit them as somebody who might consider moving there.
Right.
And Uruguay is the nicest of all the countries we've visited. So that is, now in Canada is gargantuan, but so we only touched a little bit, but we visited Canada, Spain, Portugal, Mexico, Belize, Uruguay, and Ecuador.
Okay.
And Uruguay is just, it is just so nice. I don't know any other, it's just nice. You would go there and go, this is nice. And, when you get off the plane, you see Volvo ads, and that is very apt. If I had to give Uruguay a brand, it would be Volvo.
A Volvo.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, well, it's Swedish, I guess, but it is safe. It is a little bougie. It is practical. And I just thought it was tremendous. And the food was fantastic. I am a foodie, but I am also super picky. Like, I don't love every flavor in the world.
Yeah.
And Uruguay food is like the best beef, the best wine, and then their dessert, their famous dessert is this thing called alfajore, and it is 2 like chocolate cookies filled with caramel and then enrobed in chocolate, and they're freaking
Amazing.
everywhere. I know. We left Uruguay and went straight to Ecuador, and thank God they eat a lot of soup, and we needed to detox.
You needed a absolutely. Oh, but so worth it. So worth it to have a chocolate caramel delight 100%. Amazing.
Yeah, it's making me hungry just thinking about it. So I will just say, and you'll hear Karen talk about that it's not cheap, and she's not wrong. It isn't, but I think that the value you get is something really special. There is tons of new housing. You aren't going to feel like you're pushing anyone out of a house. It's very modern. Montevideo reminded me a lot of Vancouver, but maybe a little fresher. And of course, any place in Latin America is full of culture and vibrancy and energy and charm.
Amazing. Well, let's learn more about why our audience should consider Uruguay from Karen and Diego.
Hi, welcome back. We are so excited today to have Diego and Karen from Uruguay. If you don't know this, Uruguay has just absolutely exploded in popularity. I personally think it's the next Portugal. So we're excited to talk about what life is like there and if Americans should move there and why and how. And I'd like to start just by meeting our experts. Karen is the Uruguay, and she's been living there for how long, Karen?
26 years now.
26 years. And Diego works with and started, Sierra Atlantica?
Yes. I started Sierra Atlantica in the pandemic time.
Wow. So Karen, will you just tell us, what does it mean to be the Uruguay?
Well, obviously the joke is that I am the guru of Uruguay for English speakers. I've been writing about Uruguay now for coming up to 13 years, website, books, and it's actually something that I would say is something that is very genuine, and obviously people feel that because when I arrived in Uruguay 26 years ago, fresh from Washington DC, obviously I'm a Brit, but I'd been living in Washington DC with my family, and we moved down to Uruguay for quality of life 26 years ago. And everybody that I met, I was so charmed with Uruguay. I was raving about it all the time. And everybody that I met would say, oh, you just really like it because you travel a lot and you leave all the time. Because I was working for an international organization, so I'd make many, many trips throughout the year. And I was like, I don't think so, but okay, whatever. But the reality is that I've always felt totally charmed by Uruguay, and we could have lived anywhere in the world, and we chose here, and we chose to stay as well. So it's something that I really, and I obviously people sense that. They sense that I'm not selling the country so much as like helping people explore it. And I'm an interpreter for Uruguay as well, because I think that obviously when you're not from a country and a culture, then I've spent enough time here now, and I speak Spanish, and so I can actually interpret quirks and maybe some things that people at first they might be annoyed by, but I can tell you what's behind that, and then you see the person's face just like completely change, and they're like, oh, okay, now I get it. And so that's the interpreter part.
I want to go back. Oh, sorry, Jen, if you want to go.
Well, I just wanted to say that you have so many social media followers. You must realize that you alone have had a major impact on Americans in particular, even knowing where Uruguay is and what life is like there.
Yeah. I always say that my superpower is give me somebody from the States, and specifically from the States. I guess I did my third year at Berkeley in California. And as I said, we lived for 4 years in Washington, DC. So I was an American Studies major. So I have a good handle on what makes people from the States tick. And I always say my superpower is give me somebody from the US for 10 minutes and they're going to want to come to Uruguay.
It's true. And you really can't Google anything about Uruguay without you coming up.
That's what people tell me.
Yeah, it's true. And it just speaks to me about how important it was that you started your site and started writing about what you did. Anyway, Stephanie.
Yeah. One of the things that you mentioned is that you had traveled a lot, but you were so charmed by Uruguay. Talk to me about what charmed you so much. And is it the same now in 2026, 26 years later? Are you still charmed by the same things that Uruguay has to offer?
Well, I think one thing that Uruguay has is that it changes very little. Uruguayans as a population, they're conservative with a small c, even though they've done like really major, crazy, progressive things. Like have complete separation of church and state in a very Catholic continent. Europe did that 150 years ago. And so we've done kind of like these really outstanding things, yet Uruguayans as a nation, they would characterize themselves as low profile. And I feel that they're very conservative with a small c. Even though political parties in general, I would say that they all believe that there should be a social safety net and that there should be as much egalitarianism as possible, which means that Uruguay, therefore, is an expensive country because, you have to pay for that. But the benefits are evident in the way that the country is.
God, that's so true.
Right.
Diego, you made a video. Yes, that was good. Diego, you made a video not long ago that talked about how Uruguay is welcoming for the very reasons that Karen was talking about. Can you speak to just the concept of live and let live and being accepting and tolerant?
Yes. Of course, that after the pandemic time, when Sierra Atlantica started, we start like finding the reasons why people start looking for Uruguay. At that specific moment, the first reason was how Uruguay managed the pandemic time. But after that, Uruguay it is becoming very popular for different reasons. One of which is that we have a very flexible migration policy. Other one, it's because of climate. People really value that we have 4 seasons in the year, that winter is not so cold and summer is not so hot. But the most important, I think, reason why nowadays they are choosing Uruguay is because we are a country that really celebrate diversity, and we are very open to receive whoever wants to come here and be who it is. So at that point, I think that is like the most important reason why nowadays people from the States are choosing Uruguay, and for sure that that they will find here a very stable democracy, also political and social situations that give them like a peace of mind for choosing Uruguay today, but not only for today, only also as a project for the future in their life.
Diego, talk to me a little bit about the types of Americans that you are seeing move to Uruguay. Is it mostly retirees? Is it families? Do you see a little bit of everybody? Talk to me about the types of clients that you've worked with.
To be honest, we have like two type of clients. First of all, we have people that are maybe retired and they really love to come to Uruguay because they are less stressed. They plan to live here very calm and enjoy in our country. And probably they have like a social security in the state that is really good for in comparison to the cost of living of Uruguay. And the other like type of client that we have nowadays is there are maybe families from 40 years old that maybe they have 1 or 2 kids and they want to come here like to enjoy more the nature. They really trust in the Uruguayan education system, and probably in those cases they work remote, so they keep their works of the states or for wherever they work, and they keep doing it here. Also, they have like the peace of mind that we have the best Wi-Fi connection in the whole continent, so you can be connected wherever you are, and that is also very useful for the people that they are coming. And that will be like the two type of clients that today we are receiving from the States. Of course, that from Europe and from South America there are other types of clients, but and also they choose Uruguay for different reasons.
Of course.
We've just done, just to jump in, here at Uruguay, we've just done a review of the clients that we've done consulting with last year. And we actually found a change in the profile because prior to that, it was definitely what Diego was saying. But last year, what we found was that 35% of our clients are active retirees. 40% are people that are working online. So they have the ability to be able to work online from anywhere in the world, and they're in a life transition. Of that profile, we found that 60% of the people were LGBT. And also then 30%, which for us was new because we've normally had that for those first two groups. Last year, 30% were families with children that were looking to relocate. And that's definitely, in the vast majority of cases, they were people that prior to this last period of Trump, they would not have considered leaving the US. And now they are very serious about moving. In fact, the other change that we found with our consulting clients is that before, people would contact us to say, like, is Uruguay a good fit for us? You know, and then thinking about doing an exploratory trip. But now we have an awful lot of people who literally are saying, I've got my ticket, what should I be doing?
Isn't it true that Uruguay decriminalized same-sex relationships in 1934?
My understanding is actually that, well, first of all, it was men only, because women were never even in the picture there. Despite the fact, interestingly, that in about 1910, no, before that, Uruguay was the first country to actually pass no-fault divorce. And so, yeah. So either side could file for divorce. I think it was 1907, something like that.
Wow.
But same-sex relationships between men, or sex rather than relationships, was not actually anything that wasn't really criminalized, but in the 1930s, it was kind of like, this is not a problem for us.
Mm-hmm.
Uruguay has a very live and let live attitude, even now. And I think that was one thing you asked me, like, how many changes have I seen? And the beauty is that Uruguay doesn't really change a huge amount. I mean, I'm really hopeful that we don't end up with a negative Portugal situation for that reason.
Yeah.
And that people that come do really feel that it's important for them to fit into the local culture as well.
That's a
And
great.
something also, Jen, that we are seeing is that the people that they are moving to Uruguay, they really come to give something to our society. We have like people that really come here like or to invest or to be part of the society, but they want to give back to Uruguay what Uruguay offers to them, and that is really very good because they come with very good intentions, and I think it's something that our government is like promoting also, because it's something that we need as a country to continue in this way of developing Uruguay and to become like a bigger and a more developed country. Imagine that we are only 3.5 million people, so we need to be more crowded and with more activity, because all the people that come here, or they are just working, or they make an investment, or they are just like consuming in their daily life, and that make like our economy keep growing all the time. So that is something that I really value, the like the profile of people that they are choosing Uruguay are really good for our country.
Just to add that if it wasn't for new immigrants coming in the last 10 years, then Uruguay would have actually had negative population growth in the last census. And because of immigrants, most of which are Latin American at the moment, English-speaking immigrants are still a very small percentage. We're talking about 50. I saw that this was something that I saw in an article that both Diego and I were featured in the local press this weekend. That there were 56 applications for residency from the US in Uruguay last month. So we're really talking about tiny numbers still. But that's appropriate, right? Because Uruguay is small. So we want to keep things fairly proportional.
Our goal is to spread everybody out. It's to not fit everybody.
Yay!
But places really do get popular. But the other thing is, I think they really blow out of proportion the American impact in like the American media. And so somebody asked yesterday on our forum, I read that Americans are invading Uruguay and that they're tired of them and so on. And you just said, 56 people, give me a break. They can fit on one bus. So have you seen anything about how America is received? I try to remind Americans that not everybody cares about you. You're not the main character. And so for the most part, people just are like, an American and go about their business. But have you seen anything different?
No, I think at that point we always tell that Uruguay is a very welcoming country, and that I think is something that you can realize in the daily life. Like we try all the time to be in contact with all our different clients and how they are like inserting in our culture and our society, and they feel like not only really safe, they also feel like they can enjoy their daily life however they want, and they are not like all the time that someone is looking for them or something like that. Maybe at some point, as they do not speak the same language, they have like some barriers in some cases, but it's something that they will adapt. And I don't know, the Uruguayans will all the time try to explain you or help you in whatever you need. Like I don't see in our society nowadays like anybody that is claiming because Americans are coming here or something related to that. I think that the big change we will see it like in some years, because as we are becoming popular, maybe there are coming more and more and more Americans here, and maybe you can see like how many they are. But nowadays, I think that they were only for you it's a lot 56, but of course I think in the future will be much more. So uh, like
Sure.
people will see it more in the daily life. Nowadays when I talk with friends or family, they do not realize how many immigrants we are having and how we are like relocating people here. But I think it's a change that is happening right now.
English speakers are still a novelty here. That's for sure. I'm just thinking about when I started writing about Uruguay in English. You know, there were really very few people. The reason I did it was because there was nothing out there in English about Uruguay, let alone something that had opinion and was up to date. What I found now is that even the journalist that interviewed Diego and I for the big Sunday newspaper, you know, she said, I've just found out, I was talking to somebody who told me that there are all these people coming from the US. And they said that they should talk to you. And I was like, really? So you have no idea? And she's like a national journalist, right? She's like, no, this was totally new to me. And the article that came out on the weekend, actually, on the first day, it had 30,000 reads in the newspaper, which for a Uruguayan newspaper is a lot. And she told me that the repercussions were really big. A lot of other people in the media talking to her about kind of like she almost had this scoop. And the article was basically an interview with two families that have moved here from the US in the last 6 months, both clients of Uruguay and also clients of Sierra Atlantica as well. And then with a bunch of service providers, so the trusted networks that we put together here in Uruguay, right, and that you guys are tapping into Expatsy. And so really these are the people that were being spoken to and interviewed for this article, but it was treated as like a scoop. And I've even been contacted now by the German international press to do something about, for TV for them. So obviously it's news.
And information that it was there in the newspaper. For example, in our case, we receive like 200 of people every day that write to Sierra Atlantica asking for moving here, and that for Uruguay it's a lot. Although then, like many of them, they not take the move abroad here, or maybe they are thinking it for the future. If we consider like all the people of all the world that write us every day is 200, and for Uruguay, trust me that it's an amazing number.
You know, Karen, you mentioned was last month that 56 folks started their residency process for Uruguay. Jen and I are in this move abroad space day in and day out. You and Diego are in the Uruguay space day in and day out. But I still feel like Uruguay is a little bit of a hidden gem. I think if you ask an average American, they may not be able to find it on a map. So what is something that you would want an American to know about Uruguay as they consider their move abroad options?
I think that the fact that it's such a progressive country, that's something to really value. And so, and that this is not something that's come overnight. This is the result of 150 years of political and social decisions made internationally. And so that to me is the greatest thing about it. It's not a country that this has happened to overnight at all, if any country ever is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And maybe to add, I think that here you can live with total freedom. That is really important in the world, the crazy world that we are nowadays. And also all the people that move here, when you speak with them again, I don't know, 6 months after their move, they feel like less stressed than 6 months before coming here. And those are things that I think that people nowadays are really like valuing and considering when they choose a new country. And of course, like it's like something else that our country has to offer. We also we are very, like, some cities are really very developed, so you can enjoy them and you can have like the best services in probably in South America. Also, it's a very safe country where you can find also like very natural places that are really very nice. Maybe I will not say that we have the best beaches of South America, but probably we are in top three. And that connection with the nature, it's another thing that people really value nowadays.
When for the books the guidebooks that I've written on Montevideo, the capital, and Amazon and Uruguay. Obviously, the book about Montevideo is 140 pages of things to do in Montevideo, as well as some of the social and cultural history. The book on Uruguay is broken into 3 parts. One is beaches, as Diego mentioned. The other is ranches or estancias. 95% of Uruguay is rural. And the other is wine country, because Uruguay has the most fantastic wineries here, and they're all tiny and boutique, which is, I think, something about Uruguay that, you haven't heard about it before, because Uruguayans are not great at blowing their own trumpets either.
Brent still talks about the Tanat wine that we had there. We loved it. So, okay, so how do people move to Uruguay? What are the visa paths?
Okay. At that point, something really attractive for Americans that they're moving here is that they can just they have 2 ways of moving here. One, it will be like start working like on distance and preparing all the paperwork and working on distance. And once they could come in a scouting trip just to look our culture, our cities, and all that. And maybe after that they start the process. Or if not, they can just like arrive here, start like with their tourist visa of 90 days, and during that period of time you can consider like applying for a residency process. So at that point it's very flexible the way you can choose. Of course, if you have the chance to if it's affordable for you, I would recommend you to take a scouting trip, because it's the chance like to discover different cities, to start like making more planified decisions, and also to understand a bit more of our culture. I don't know, for example, we have dinner at 10 in the night, and probably for an American that will be like very crazy, but there are little things that you have to consider before coming. And then if I have to make like a quick summary of the whole process of a residency, I would say that it's divided in 3 stages. A stage where we have to work on paperwork, a second stage that you have to fly here in order to take a residency appointment. And then once you have your residency approved, you will have to take a final appointment for taking the Uruguayan ID card that is called Cédula. And in an average of 8 months, you could have like your residency approved. You can stay living here while your residency is on study. And that's also something very interesting, because if you just like arrive in Uruguay and you apply for the residency, you don't have like, of course that you can go back, but you can stay here living like while your residency is on study. So that are like the how it works, the residency process nowadays here in Uruguay.
And you can work as well, not just live, but work straight away when you arrive. Your kids
that's
go to school.
Karen, what are the best places to live, or where do most Americans choose to live?
Well, most people with means, let's say, would choose to live either in the capital city. Those people that particularly like to be in a capital with all of the culture and entertainment options that you have, but also very walkable neighborhoods. Then after that, probably the most popular area is the Punta del Este region, which is about 2 hours east of the capital. And that's right there, you're on the Atlantic Ocean. So that's kind of like beach living. But as Diego said, you've still got all of the infrastructure, like, good hospitals, international schools that somebody would be likely to want. Those are the 2 main poles at the moment. Because most people, obviously, they are concerned about those things that we've just mentioned. If there are other options, some people go and they move into the interior. That's very remote. Even if you're not that far into it, it does feel very remote, even just an hour away from the coastline, for example. And a lot of people really like that. It's great if you're living by yourself. one thing to be aware of is that homeschooling is not allowed in Uruguay. But in general, the two that I've mentioned, and Punta del Este as a region, not just as the city of Punta del Este, there are lots of beach towns along there that are really, really great places to live.
Yes. If I have to add two things to what Karen said, I would say like we're a so small country that only in 7 hours driving you can go from one point to another one. So if you live in the middle of the countryside and you want to go for a week or for some days to the beach, you are very near. And the second thing that I think it's interesting to show is that like I think that the people that choose Punta del Este, in most of the cases, they have kids and they really value being connected to the nature. In our case, for example, the people that they are like a bit older and they retire, in not all the cases they choose Punta del Este. They consider more like city people and they prefer Montevideo. That is a difference that we are seeing in the last year. That people that they are younger and come with their whole family with kids, they may prefer Punta del Este instead of Montevideo.
You mentioned that it can be expensive, Karen, by South American standards at least. Can you give me an example of like, I don't know, what a 2-bedroom apartment might be to rent or a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home might be to buy?
It's expensive by global standards, to be honest. It's the most expensive country in Latin America. The Economist has the Big Mac index. And they register the most expensive Big Macs in the world. Well, the price of a Big Mac in the world. And Uruguay and Switzerland tie for the most expensive Big Mac in the world.
That's wild because Switzerland is so expensive. Although you told me Uruguay is called the Switzerland of South America, right?
Yeah, that comparison has been around for many decades, actually, even from like maybe the 50s or perhaps earlier. So yeah, there are lots of comparisons. Of course, things like you asked me for the price of rent. That's where comparatively to the US, to urban areas, at least or beach areas, then Uruguay is much more affordable. So you're looking at, for example, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment in one of the neighborhoods that people would like in Montevideo. We're probably going to be talking about, well, it depends, but maybe $1,500 to $2,000 a month.
Yes.
Diego's probably maybe like a little bit more, has a bit more accurate.
Yes, probably. Of course, it will depend like which neighborhood you choose and how near you are to the beach. But I think that with a budget of $1,500 or $2,000, you will really live in a very nice place in the best like neighborhoods of Montevideo. And in the case of Punta del Este, the rentals or the purchase really like. The rentals really change because you have like the summer season and the rest of the year. During the summertime, they are crazy expensive, but during the rest of the year, they are really very affordable or very similar to Montevideo, and you will live like in first class like apartments or houses. And also talking about cost of living, although we know we are like the country like more expensive in all South America, I think that when you pay that cost of living, you pay like how safe you feel, you pay like good hospitals, you pay like a really nice place to live, and that are like intangible things that you are paying at the moment that you move here. And also we usually compare how expensive it's for example, for people from South America that move to Uruguay in comparison to people that move from United States. And probably when you compare like the cost of living in the States with Uruguay, it will be affordable for you and it will not be like a disadvantage. I will say like 100% of the people that have a social security, for example, in the States, they will live like in very good conditions here in Uruguay and they could enjoy like a great time here. Of course, in the cases that they are working, if they maintain their job of networking to outside, they will probably also would live like very good. In the cases that I think it's more difficult is when they move here and they look for a job here, because it really depends on what type of job you're looking for. But Uruguayans are very qualified, and probably it will not be so easy to find a job. And also, like the salaries that we have here, it really depends on the company where you're working with. It's all the things that we try to help the foreigners before coming here, like to try to planify in the best way their lives, so they can enjoy our country. We don't want like people that come here and do not enjoy Uruguay. So we try to help them to make the best decision. In some cases, Uruguay is the best option. In other ones, it may be in another place. And that, I think, it's our more transparent job in every day in Sierra Atlantica.
I was going to say, I think the best situation is to land in Uruguay is to earn abroad and spend in Uruguay.
Well, Diego and Karen, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise, and Karen sharing your story of moving to Uruguay. If folks want to learn more about this amazing country, you can visit expatsy.com, and we have a list of resources as well as how you can connect with Diego and Karen, and also learn more about our Expatsy scouting trips to Uruguay. Diego and Karen, thank you again for joining us. So Jen, we had some listeners submit questions for us. Are you ready to answer some listener questions?
Always.
We had somebody wondering about taxes. They wanted some insight on how to best research, how to compare countries side by side, what information they could look into about taxes.
So this is the quintessential question, and everybody asks it, and they always ask for exactly this, which is, tell me how much I would pay in taxes in Portugal compared to Spain, compared to Italy, compared to Greece, compared to Mexico, compared to Costa Rica. And no existe. That does not exist. And the reason is because, I mean, think about what it takes to be an expert in taxes in one country. And it's just impossible to be an expert in taxes in multiple. And actually, even in Europe, I learned that it's illegal to give tax advice for more than one country. You really have to focus on yours. Then, so I've gone to providers and I've said, okay, but listen, what if I had these three scenarios and I have somebody with $2,000 a month in Social Security and how much that would be taxed? And my second scenario is somebody with $1.25 million in retirement account. And my third scenario is somebody with $75,000 a year in remote work. And they just won't do it. It like just triggers every single regulation fear that they have. So what we say is that taxes is part of stage 3 exploration. Listen, I'm not going to get into all this right now, but we have the 6 stages of moving abroad that we help people go through. And stage 3 exploration is when you're deciding where you want to go. And that's when we think you reach out to tax folks. It's not, at that point, you have narrowed down a list of countries where you can go. And so you take your 2, 3, 4, 5 top choices, and then we can connect you with a tax professional in each of those countries to get what your liability might be.
I think that's great advice.
Here's one. So what question should my wife and I be asking ourselves to see if we actually want to move abroad?
I love this question because when my husband and I were planning our move abroad, there was a lot of discussion to make sure that we were aligned and that we were doing it for similar reasons. So some of the things that I think the two of you should be discussing, number one is, are you running towards something or are you running away from something? And look, your mileage may vary, whatever that answer looks like to the two of you. But I think really focusing on what feels appealing about life abroad. Why are we looking to leave in the first place? Figuring out what your day-to-day might look like. I turned to my husband Dave when we were planning this, and I asked him, describe to me what an average Tuesday will look like for you when we're living in another country. So not the special thing, not the, and we can take a train to France, not the, we're going to be able to eat croissants every day. Like, just what does a day where you have to go to the grocery store and you're a little tired, and what does that look like?
from someone who's eaten brunch 8 times in her first 3 weeks, I think that eating a
I love a
croissant
brunch.
every day is absolutely a Tuesday.
I've had eight very distinct and different brunches. So be aware that there is variety in my brunch living. I think one of the other things to discuss is how much uncertainty each of you can tolerate. Look, the only thing that is constant in moving abroad is change. When I talk about our move to Portugal, and Jen knows this, we had 9 law changes from the time we started our visa process to the end. Now, a lot of these were tiny, they needed an extra month of this, one fewer month of this paperwork. Nothing major, nothing that derailed. But for a lot of folks, being risk averse and being change adverse is what will stop somebody in their track. So making sure that both of you are down for just a little bit of uncertainty, and more importantly, that when things are uncertain and somebody starts to spiral, usually it's me, that the other person knows how to pick up the slack and support. And I think discussing the things that can derail from a perspective of the uncertainty. I think just knowing what everybody's threshold looks like. And then the last thing is, what does home mean to each of you? Really defining what does that feeling of safety, that feeling of comfort, that feeling of belonging, what does that look like for each of you? And is it the things that you bring from the US that make it feel like home? Is it a certain type of environment? Is it new hobbies that you will build together? Is it the same hobbies that you're bringing from the US? What is going to create that comfort as you move abroad? Because everything beyond that really is logistics. The where can I go? What is our visa path? And then you narrow down the countries from there. But really, why are y'all doing this? And are y'all aligned? Just speaking into the universe, it's going to be scary sometimes. We're going to ask ourselves, what in the world do we get ourselves into? And then you get over it and you're like, we got ourselves into something amazing. And then defining what home needs to feel like for you to feel like it's a success.
I love that. I love that. I know that a lot of people start by running away from something, and I think that's fine. Essentially the cost benefit analysis of staying in the US has changed for people. Absolutely. And so the cost has risen and the benefit has lowered. And between those two things, it's like, okay, I'm ready to go explore other things. And I think it's okay to start with, I just want out. And yeah. I think that's also where we kind of thrive, because if you already know, what, I want to retire in 2029 to Tamarindo in Costa Rica. I've traveled there 422 times, and I am going to buy a condo on the 3rd floor overlooking the beach. Well, that's not, we help people move abroad, and that's really not our client. Most often our client is, I want out. And help. So, yeah, exactly. And maybe they have an idea of, I want walkable cities, or I want sunshine, or whatever else. But in general, it really does start with, I want out. But then it becomes, okay, well, now you're out. So what does it look like when you are out? What does life look like then?
I think we have time for one more question, Jen. And I feel this is the perfect yin to the warm fuzzies of this last question, because Charles R. asks, for those of us not ready to move, but considering it, what simple preparation makes the move smooth eventually? Is it foreign bank accounts, gathering certain records? What ducks need to be rowed? And I love the way he asked that. So when we're talking logistics, for somebody who is planning well in advance, what advice do you have for them, Jen?
So this is a great question, and it goes back to the 6 stages of moving abroad that we were talking about. And it's really tempting, right, to do exactly what he's asking, which is to start gathering all your documents and going through your Beanie Babies and see what you're going to toss and keep and store and whatever. And the truth is, none of those things are necessarily particularly useful right now. If they are comforting to you and you enjoy them, then fine. But most likely your documents are going to be out of date. You can't just go get documents notarized or apostilled or whatever else or translated, and then it just lasts indefinitely. Plus, the country that you are moving to has different requirements than every other country. So you go get all your documents translated into Portuguese, and then you move to Belize, So it really doesn't help to do the later steps. These are all what he's asking about are mostly step 4 items. There's definitely no point in necessarily opening a foreign bank account. You can always go get Charles Schwab, so you can get easy, get your ATM fees reimbursed or whatever else. Excuse me. But there is a reason why we have the steps. And so what I would focus on is stage 1. We call it ideation. And what that involves is making sure that you have the basics that you need to move, a little bit of cash and a way to make money abroad. And then you start to deal with the emotional side. Am I ready emotionally? Am I going to be additive where I'm going? Am I going to be a good immigrant and contribute to the community? What am I afraid of? How do I address those things? And then big picture questions about finance and taxes, which is to say, how am I going to support myself abroad? Then you move into planning, and that's where you get into the real nitty gritty of what is my path? Am I either an investor, a passive income person, a remote work person? Am I going to get a job locally? Am I going to go to school? Whatever. And so if you are sometimes it's nice to have a checklist. Stephanie, we're the goddesses of this.
Checklist? Did you say my favorite word?
So it's nice to have a checklist and be like, ooh, check off the little easy items.
It is a dopamine drip to check off something or scratch it off the list.
Absolutely. But the truth is those things are not going to get you any closer to moving.
Right.
So if you're going to make a checklist, make it about working through fears and emotions. And here is what I need to do financially to be ready and so on. And then you go into exploration, which is super fun, and you can choose where you want to go.
Right. I use the analogy of buying a brand new cookbook and going, I'm going to cook something from this cookbook. And the next thing you do is just go buy a bunch of groceries without deciding what recipe you're going to try to cook to. Because you may not have bought the right thing. You might have brought too much of one thing and not enough of another. So going in order will save you a lot of time, trouble, headache, and at the end of the day, money and documents that you may or may not need. And then you have someone like me who needed different documents at the end of the process with these 9 law changes that we had for Portugal in the middle. So even then, you may find that you need things you weren't expecting or didn't need things that you had on hand already.
I love it. That's perfect. I'm from Alabama. So if you know Nick Saban, you got to trust the process.
Absolutely. Well, if you would like us to answer your question, you can email in to podcast@expatsy.com. Americans Abroad is an Expatsy production. Please like, share, subscribe, and leave a review. Are you thinking about moving abroad? Start with our quiz at expatsy.com. That's expatsy.com.